Welcome back as we have more of our voice actor series. We're putting these out a little bit quicker than we usually would because, well, we're all stuck at home. This is a guest that we've had on before. She is returning for the first time in quite a few years, but a lot has changed, and I do hope that you go look at the show notes when you're done here because all the stuff we discuss will be in the show notes, and I hope that you can take advantage of some of the ones if you need it. But for now, Zach, introduce our guest.
To be in the presence of a voice and indeed an all-around acting talent that through its artful contributions has helped to shape a generation of fans is no small honor. That honor is bestowed upon us by returning guest Miss Tasia Valenza, whose resonant renditions of regally regarded roles have appeared in Star Wars, Star Trek, Superman, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, and Arkham Asylum, wherein she voiced none other than Poison Ivy and Martha Wayne. In addition to maintaining a singularly stylish hat collection, she has even been nominated for a Daytime Emmy. There are few words that would do our humble honor at your company and conversation justice, Ms. Valenza, so we are left to simply extend our warmest of welcomes to the Fanatarium.
And with that, welcome back after 5, 6, maybe 7 years. I have to look back at the logs, but welcome back to the show. It's been a long time, and I think for many listeners, far too long.
Oh, well, that's so kind of you to say, and I'm delighted to be with you.
And I think the first thing we should probably talk about is something that I know you're extremely excited for. You recently got to do a TED Talk, which is not something that a lot of voice actors get to do. So why don't you talk about your TED Talk and how does someone even get to do a TED Talk?
Well, thank you for sharing. That's my most recent kind of passion project that it's only been 7 years in the making. So it was definitely something that has evolved. And I actually applied, I did a TEDx talk, which is the satellite version of TED proper, which is, become this phenom, which is sharing ideas worth spreading, which is great, and in a concise form, 18 minutes or less. And so even I think 7 years ago, I was like, I would love to do a TED Talk about voiceover, but really didn't know what that was going to be like. And over the last 7 years, it evolved into this notion of what it means to give great voice. And luckily, 7 years later, I finally decided I was ready to submit and submitted to a school, La Sierra, which is a college out here in Riverside. And they said yes right away, which was lovely. And then I got to share the talk, and it came out almost a month ago and has been really well received. So that's been a gift to me. And it's really just about translating what I consider to be giving great voice, which is to move or touch someone with our voices, which we do as actors all the time, to give that same set of tools to non-actors so they can think like a voiceover actor in their own lives and play their professional and personal roles more successfully. So that's the crux of it, is really to translate how what I do into that everybody can essentially do that, at least to have more confident verbal communication.
So do they just have you doing your TED Talk alone, or do they have like back-to-back or multiple times? I'm assuming if it's through a college, it was probably like the guest speaker type situation where they bring you on and people who want to go. But do they have other people also do it, or they just do one at a time?
Oh, no, they actually had this college, this was their 5th year, and all the TEDx's that are whatever there are, the satellites that are basically governed by TED, they do a full either 1 or 2 days of just the talks, and they have different speakers come in with, a lot of times they have a theme. So mine was through it all, and if you watch it, the set looks pretty disheveled because there were some storm chasers and there was a firefighter, and my through it all, the theme was how do we overcome? So mine was really overcoming our inability to communicate and our apathy from using our digital communication as opposed to our voices. So it looks like a little strange, like why does the set look like that? But it was that's what they do. the speakers have kind of a through line, even if it's emotional and physical. And it's a full day, and they have audiences anywhere from like 200 to 2,000, more for the TED speakers. And it's just this great way to learn. As a matter of fact, given where we are right now, if you wanted to learn some really fascinating things, I'd basically say go enjoy some great TEDx's, including my own, which is under Give Great Voice. But you can learn about pretty much anything you're interested in, and you can put in the subtitles that you're interested in and find a TEDx talk on that. So it's a great way to share some of this downtime by not only playing video games, which are fantastic, but then to learn something that you might be interested in.
In my middle school class that I teach, I show them TED Talks all the time, and I think the ones that they always gravitate towards are the James Veitch ones, where he talks about spam and responds to spam and the crazy things that happens. And he's shown up on lots of the late night shows, but he talks about his adventures in spam, where he'll respond to spam emails and get them to basically stop by annoying them.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. I thought it was almost like Spam the Ham, and I was like, which spam you were talking about?
No, he responds to spam emails like the Nigerian prince type ones, and this goes until he breaks them.
I love that.
They're really interesting, but that my students don't understand the age when if you click a spam email, your computer would be covered with pop-ups, and you couldn't stop it, and your computer would crash, and you get infected by opening an email randomly. Not as bad now, but it was pretty bad before.
Oh yes, no, I mean that can be very educational on teaching just that. Like, don't open a spam email, or at least understand what's happening with it without lecturing to your kids. You just show them this video, and they might think it's interesting and cool enough to watch it and learn at the same time.
And they laugh and smile, and they'll remember it. Hopefully, at least better.
Exactly. And that's how I try to approach my view on public and private speaking, through this novel lens on being a voiceover artist and what that's like, because people are really intrigued with that.
So when you did this, if you're doing it all day, how far in advance did you have to be there? Or did they just have you show up just a little bit before and then you go on? Did you get to watch the other speakers?
Yes, I watched pretty much all day. I came early. I actually went and practiced a few times because I wanted to feel comfortable, because, I call myself a recovering actress and a fully functioning voiceover artist because I started on camera and did that for many years. But since I've been doing voiceover, I haven't been on that many stages. So it was actually because I had to write it and perform it myself. And so I really wanted to make sure that I was giving my best presentation. And so I practiced, I drove out there. That was one of the reasons I submitted so locally, because I didn't want to fly anywhere to have to practice it. So yeah, I went, I practiced, and then I did mine and watched the other speakers who were fascinating. And, then a couple of months later, it just uploaded, and I've had some wonderful reaction from it. And it's been really gratifying because it's 16 minutes, but it's really a novel way. Well, let me ask you, instead of you asking me, what do you think of it? What did you get out of it?
I enjoyed it. One thing I like to talk about is, I'm in middle school, so it's an age where kids can, they're too cool for school. They don't know what jobs they want to do. In my middle school in Arizona, there's no required reading. There's no books you have to read. And so getting kids latched onto anything they love can be really hard, because A, they're overwhelmed by all the choices, and B, they're not reading enough or having to read enough to really know what they want to do. And so with yours, what they latched on most is, these are characters that they know. And, a lot of these ones have played Arkham, have played Injustice. And so they know who you are, and because of that, they're able to latch on to what's going on. Because I like showing them stuff from voice actors, because a lot of times they don't know who the voice actor is. You don't, in general, people don't know the face, unless it's like Jess Harnell, because he has a very memorable face. And he's everywhere.
And hair.
He's a rock star.
He is.
Legally, yes, he is a rock star. Yeah, and he just got married, I believe, too.
I know.
But for the most part, they don't know faces of voice actors, and so they go there and then they latch on to who you were, and then once they figure out who you were, they connected a lot more.
Right.
And so I liked how you literally shared about getting into the frame of these characters. You talked about voicing Poison Ivy, how it's kind of the sexy but also powerful at the same time, and how you had to become that voice, that person. I'm also a big Batman fan, so named my son after Batman. And so I kind of latch onto that. Yeah, I have a Bruce, and then I have an Aurora, so I have a princess, and the last one was Killian because I like Batman Begins and Killian Murphy, as my wife says, has beautiful eyes. So you got to go with that.
Love that. That is a true diehard. And your wife was cool with that, or was she a fan too?
What she did is she said, "I like the name Bruce." I'm like, Batman, we're good. Like, no more questions. We're done.
There we go. We don't have to overthink it.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, my siblings are like waiting like 3 weeks after the baby's born. Like, we don't know the name of it. Just name your child. Just figure out. but I really appreciated diving into that, and I actually got some of my students, because this last week was kind of really odd.
Yes,
we were in school and we didn't quite know what's going to happen after spring break. It's spring break now, and so we had a lot of free time. And one of them actually dived into, she voiced Poison Ivy, and then she went, wait, so did this person and this person and this person. Which one was she? And I was like, I actually find that really cool, because last time we talked to you, Arkham City had come out a couple of years before, and that was a huge success. But since then, we talked about it, and before that, we talked about how Jennifer Hale and Vanessa Marshall had voiced Poison Ivy. People we both had on the show and have talked to. But then, since then, we've had Tara Strong do a lot of Poison Ivy, Laura Bailey do a lot of Poison Ivy, Frida Wolf, who I know mostly from Mass Effect Andromeda. I loved talking to her. She's really fun. I've been on, and then mixing there, you've been there again. Vanessa Marshall's been there again. We've had several of the actresses or people from that did Gotham. Got the voice people, and it's just like so many different roles. But no matter whatever show you watch, that is Poison Ivy, and it's kind of awesome to see so many different people give their spin on it. But at the same time, you always know it's Poison Ivy.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And these are all fantastic actresses that all lend their own unique spin on it. And I have been blessed to be able to play her in many different iterations. And, especially in Arkham Knight, to be able to kind of really bring out the Shiro in her was really just an honor, just because I think, sometimes she's considered just a villainess, but she's so much more multidimensional than that. And she really, spoiler alert, was one of the heroes and Shiros of that particular game. And as an actress, it's always, voice actress, it's a pleasure to be able to show dimension in a character.
So after having such a kind of a meaty role with Arkham games with her, was it quite different jumping into Injustice when it's a fighting game? You're not going to have as much. You're not going to have as meaty a role because it's a different type of game. Was it odd to be like, wait, I only have these many pages instead of?
Yeah, it's always like after you played a character with a lot more weight to it, is always like, oh, okay, well, we're going back to light version of Poison Ivy. But that's understanding the medium. That's the beauty of voice acting, is that there's a million different mediums, and as long as you know who you're serving, that's the same thing. What's your intention, which I discuss in Giving Great Voice, then you honor the writing and the venue, what the project is, and you check your ego at the door, and you just do what's required to serve the piece. That's what you always do as an actor, and so I just adjust myself and still just lend my best self to that particular game.
And after doing Infinite Crisis, Arkham, Injustice, all fairly serious takes on Batman. And then you got to dive into Lego DC supervillains and play Poison Ivy there too, which is all Lego games are extremely clever, but they're not as dark. But at the same time, they can be. But what was it like diving into the Lego version of Poison Ivy, where you had to still be the same character, but at the same time, it's Lego. It's a very different audience.
Yes, well, again, you really depend on the writers, because they write it the way they want. You lend your voice to it, but you're saying their words, so you just say, okay. Now, I've watched the Lego movies and laughed myself silly over them, so I was just delighted to be able to go into that universe. And it's just taking the words and honoring the audience, and knowing that sometimes it's going to be darker, sometimes it's going to be lighter. It depends on the intention, and I just adjusted myself to them. So it's great to be able to play her in all the different mediums, and it just allows me to share share my skills as an actor. And that's the same thing again that we translate into our real lives. I mean, if we're, I shared in the TEDx talk that there's a very different way for me to ask my kids to pick up their clothes than the way I do normally. One is a lighter version, which is like, hey, kids, can you pick up your clothes? Versus the reactive way that I normally do, which is, kids, can you pick up your clothes? So that's the same thing. You translate, the more the heavier, deeper, more adult Poison Ivy, and then the Lego version, it just depends. Like, who's your audience, what's your intention, and how does your voice support that intention?
And then, another topic, just hitting back on what we talked about last time you were on. Last time we talked a lot about the Old Republic because you played one of my favorite companions in that game, a game which I might return to in the coming weeks because there's a lot of
downtime.
Where you were Kaleo, and Kaleo kept coming back in expansions. And before that, you were Shaak Ti in Clone Wars. But you have to return to Star Wars, and that team, or at least that team that's still around, with Star Wars Resistance. And one thing that listeners and others have asked, did anything change in Lucasfilm, or I guess Lucas TV, or whatever you want to call it, in between Clone Wars before Disney and all these new shows, Star Wars Resistance, etc., on after Disney? Is it still the same process, being that the same people are still in charge, or did things change slightly between shows?
My experience, because I worked with the same group, Dave Filoni's group, who's fantastic, and of course great directors and writers, I didn't experience that because I'm not really working. For one thing, I think Resistance did seem to go to a younger audience just by the way it was, colorful and a little bit, or again, maybe when my kids were watching Clone Wars, it seemed very sophisticated, but they did, definitely brighten up the visuals on Resistance. And I don't know if that was a choice by Disney or it was, more just because they envisioned it that way. But, my experience was still exactly what it was for the other, which was to play a fantastic multidimensional character, Vanessa Doza, and working with fantastic people. So I didn't notice a difference, but except visually that, it's a much more colorful. And because my kids are older, it seems like it's for a younger audience, but that might just be, again, based on the fact that, it was a lot earlier when they were watching Clone Wars when I did Clone Wars, and now they're they're teenagers, so they wouldn't be watching Resistance.
Well, there are less heads falling off. They don't have the running gag in Resistance of every season a new head has to come off. Because I think Clone Wars, by season 5, they had like a 5-head cut off at the same time. And, they kept on adding heads. Because I think Savage chucks his lightsaber, cuts off 5 at the same time. The season before was 4. And
oh my God.
They had running little things like that, which Resistance would not do.
I did not catch that because I'm not as, remembering that kind of reminds me of, Game of Thrones, sounds like that. Like, how many heads did they cut off? So yeah, I wasn't a huge, watcher of that one either. A little too much visual for me. So
one listener says, I was a really big fan of your take on Ultimecia in
Ultimecia. Yeah.
Sorry. In Dissidia Final Fantasy NT. And I hope that if they ever do the Final Fantasy VII Remake take on Final Fantasy VIII, that they get to cast you as that character, because I think that would do the character justice.
Oh, not injustice, but just justice. Sorry, had to. It's all that crossover. It gets confusing. Who am I? Yeah, well, I hope so too. I mean, I've gotten to play Ultimecia in, I think, 3 iterations now.
In 3 Dissidia games, right? I believe.
Yeah, and I love her too. I mean, I definitely have a through line of powerful, strong women, which I take as a great compliment because I definitely channel that fairly naturally in my life. I'm definitely on that side of where I'm not kind of quiet in any way. Let's just say that I definitely feel like I have a strength that comes through when I audition, and certainly I love playing these women and kind of taking a little bit from each one, and they all have certain qualities that I admire, and definitely Ultimecia has both wit and power. So I hope that when she comes back, they keep calling me. But I think I don't know that there's anybody else who's played Ultimecia, or Ultimecia, so I don't know that I wouldn't be considered, but hopefully I will.
Well, I just know with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I believe they went with new voice actors for a lot of the roles. But, of course, it's also been 25 years.
Oh, yeah, I see. I don't keep up with it until... I kind of don't keep up with it until I get the call, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I kind of just go where I'm supposed to and know that, that I'm whatever I'm supposed to be doing, the universe will align and I don't have to chase it.
Yeah. And, if they ever, I hope they do the Final Fantasy VII Remake version of 8, because 8's my favorite of them. Mm-hmm. And they could definitely do it better than they did it then. And I'd be all for it. But of course, let's hope 7 does well.
Yes.
Otherwise, it won't happen.
Exactly. 7 has to do well. I don't know how well it's doing, but if the fans always have more control than the artists. So if the fans want me and they tell the makers that's who they want, I think that they have more weight than I do.
And, of course, we'd be remiss, to not point out that, you were in Star Trek The Next Generation, live action. You came in as a guest star in one of the episodes. But you also got to return to Star Trek recently with Star Trek Discovery and the kind of new renaissance of Star Trek with Discovery and Picard and maybe some more movies soon. Who actually knows these days? But you got to return to Star Trek, this time as a computer voice. You got to do as a voice actor role. But I imagine that was kind of fun to return to a series you last went to in, I don't know what's the next generation, early 90s?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it was like a 25 or 20 year split. So yeah, it was definitely awesome to be able to recreate, or not even recreate, but to be back again. I seem to go to the stars quite often. Yeah. And I feel very lucky to be able to, since I have, like I said, a recovering actress, I don't go on camera anymore. So to be able to go back to a show or a franchise and to be able to utilize my voiceover skills and still be part of such a, wonderful, legendary show was fantastic to be able to. And of course, it's always fun to be the computer because it's so antithetical to my very animated nature, to just be very flat, which interestingly is how I got the role of a Vulcan. That was the first adult Vulcan, was Tashanik, and they never had another adult Vulcan except for Spock. And I thought, when I'm going to go in there and audition for this, I really have to kind of feel like a computer, and be really flat and very logical. So interestingly, the two do have quite a bit in common. Very logical.
And it's not the kind of the over-the-top version like, say, an Ellen McLean would do with GLaDOS, who, is a computer but goes more extreme.
Yes. Yes. I was definitely simplified and very, flat and easy and nothing too extreme.
So, a lot of the projects that people, the Star Trek, Star Wars, DC stuff, and Final Fantasy have been most of the stuff you've been doing, at least as far as the main work, for a while. But I know you've been keeping yourself busy with your TED Talk and so on. So what other projects have you been digging yourself into? I know you appeared on Talking Voices in one of the seasons. Which was, that's a show I love because these are all people. I know the voice actor. I know that one. I know that one. That's just a lot of fun for me. But what are some other things that you've been digging? You've been doing. You've been perching yourself into to create your niche.
Well, I'm teaching now, which I wasn't when we talked last. And so I teach voiceover artists how to do this wonderful career, especially in animation and gaming. And then I'm teaching and speaking for Giving Great Voice, which is to, again, go to schools, colleges, and corporations and kind of teach this public speaking and also interview skills through this lens of a voiceover actor. And then I'm narrating as a voiceover artist. Right now I'm narrating a Discovery ID for all those true crime lovers. It's called My Murder Story, and that's on Discovery ID. And then I do promos and, I do all versions of voiceover. So if I'm not doing a commercial, I'm doing an e-learning or I'm doing a narration for a series. So it's voiceover luckily lends itself to so many different mediums that the less high profile ones don't get as much play as the animated games and the series, but as a voiceover actor, I work pretty consistently in all different. I got to voice the World Series #6, the Tees, so that was cool to, yeah. And then I also won an Emmy as a voiceover actor, which I didn't expect to do. I didn't even know you could. But I donated my voice to the Wildlife Animal Sanctuary, and they have Emmys for something called the Heartland Emmys, which allow you to submit things that the normal Emmys, even though it's the same organization that gives out the Emmys, the National Academy. And so they put in the campaign for this beautiful wildlife animal sanctuary in Colorado, which saves exotic beasts from all over the world. And I won an Emmy. So that was a really wonderful way to, you give great voice and you receive great reward. And an Emmy was like kind of the top. So for me, that was just a gift that happened right before I got to do my TEDx talk. So I thought, thank you, God and the universe, because I've been an Emmy nominated actress ever since I was on All My Children.
Yeah, I was about to say, wasn't that, I thought you were nominated in the 80s. I remember us talking about that when you did soap opera.
Yeah. And I had to ride that train for 30 years. And now it's like, oh, yay, thank you. I got to get my Emmy after all. And I wasn't even expecting it. So now I'm no longer an Emmy nominated. I'm an Emmy winning. So that feels really wonderful. And then lastly, not lastly, but something I can definitely share with the audience and be able to make it a gift out of it. I was lucky enough to co-found an affirmation meditation app called Haven. And that is free. That is something that I offer, and I would really like to offer it now because even your teenagers, it's a kindness, be kind to your mind app, and it's a very soothing version of my voice in the vein of, calm and headspace. But I like to think better because I made it.
It doesn't cost a lot of money like Calm does?
Yeah, they do. Mine is free, and it's a Be Kind to Your Mind app, and it's right now with all the anxiety and the fears. It's a wonderful way to soothe and comfort yourself and ground yourself. So it's called Haven Guided Affirmations, and it's free on both, the App Store, both app stores. And so I really want to offer that because it's been a labor of love. I make no money on it, but it's something that is a gift to be able to do. And I co-wrote each one with my friend and voiced them. And it's absolutely for everyone to use.
Are there any of them available so I work as a counselor, and so I create lessons and so on to help people with these very things. And sometimes I voice them myself. Sometimes I just, find people to do it. Are there any of them available online where they can just go to the site and listen to them as well?
Yep, they're at Haven. Haven, they put them into Haven on YouTube, and again, they're not really being utilized. So yes, it's either on the app, or you can go to Haven affirmation, I think, on YouTube, and I think they downloaded them all there, so you can listen to them. Yeah, so it's really accessible, and there's it looks like a lighthouse, and there's stress reduction, there's depression mastery. They're all 10-minute affirmation meditations, and they're broken down for 7 days. There's health, wealth, addiction, confidence, depression, discipline, marriage, and leadership. And it's just a lovely way to kind of ground yourself and listen to me. And then, I call, part of giving great voice is to how we give it to ourselves, because many of us, again, when we're very anxious, we tend to let our thoughts carry us away, and then we speak unkindly to ourselves. And this affirmation meditation is a way to ground and then literally rewire the brain, through kind affirmations.
And, right now, of course, is a time where we definitely need this. Because, for example, even if we weren't going through the COVID-19 stuff we are now, state mandated testing comes up in April for most people in the United States, for students-wise. And so that's a very stressful time regardless. And this is, kind of thing I'd like to utilize to help with that, because it's stressful, it's high stakes, and
yeah, And it can be used, I had a friend who's a teacher who utilized it in her classrooms, and the kids first were like, oh my gosh. And then they were like, oh, and then they started asking for it. So it really is such a practical way to utilize it in a group. And when you're calmer, you test better because your fight or flight makes your brain kind of like, it puts you into that sympathetic nervous system where you're like, can't even think so clearly because you're not, grounded and breathing and your brain isn't getting enough oxygen. And so if you utilize it as an actual studying tool, it will actually help you test better because you will be more calm and you have more access to your brain information when you're not, getting ready to run from a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah, exactly. And, being the time we're in right now, I know we touched on it, but we've avoided, facing the lion right now. But how has the most recent, you're in San Francisco area, so it's, things have shut down.
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, sorry. You're in Los Angeles, California, which has been one of the most affected areas in the country. How has, the most recent turn of events, which, I was talking to kids a couple weeks ago, and like one person had died, a couple people had been infected, and now it's a lot bigger, and things have changed almost daily. How has this affected you as I know as an individual in the country, it's affected all of us, but as a voiceover artist, how has this affected your work?
It's definitely affected all of our works. I mean, I was certainly have seen my agency is now doing remote auditions. Luckily, we had kind of gone in that direction over the last 2 years anyway. We used to go into the office and audition. So thankfully that hasn't transpired where it was like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this from home? So I've been working in my studio/closet for 20 years, except for, when I do video games and animated series, but most of it. So it's been okay in terms of that transition to being solitary versus a lot of people, who are used to it. But certainly, like anything, all production, I mean, that means that those very games are not being produced right now in animated series. So I think it's going to be more going forward. This is just the beginning of it. So it's definitely going to be a challenging period for all voiceover actors as well. I mean, it's a lot better to be a voiceover actor than an on-camera actor, but I think, of course, there's also going to be that change where all the on-camera actors who are doing a little bit of voiceovers are going to be really focusing on that. So it's going to make it, a lot more competitive, shall we say. So, I'm absolutely staying again centered and calm. And because I work in so many different mediums, I know that I'll be fine doing it. But, and also again, right now my focus is how can I be of service? And,
one thing that, I would see happening, since so many movies are not coming to theaters right now, they postponed a lot of the movies. I would hope that a lot of places like Netflix or Disney Plus would do what, Disney Plus did a little bit with Frozen, but bump up major events they have for the summer. If it's done, put it in April, because we're all sitting at home with nothing to do. So why don't you give us whatever you have planned for the summer and have us watch it? TV would probably be wise to do the same thing. Just give us stuff.
Yeah, and or again, instead of going maybe to watch the movie for $18.99 per person, you can watch it for $3.99 on Amazon. So I think probably that's what they're going to do if this continues, because they going to want to make money than no money. But I don't know. I'm not a business person.
And Universal announced today that for all the movies that are currently in theaters by them, and including Trolls 2, which is coming out soon, you can watch it on demand day of release. In theaters for, I think it's $19.99, which is considerably cheaper than what they used to talk about a few years ago, where it was like $50 or $100. $19.99 means if you have more than two people that are going to watch it, that's going to save you money.
Absolutely, and then you make the popcorn at home, and you're golden.
And you can actually sit through the entire movie, and you don't interrupt people when kids have to pee. And
yes, said the man with 3 little ones. My gosh, you're probably in heaven about that. That's just like that's a whole different mindset.
No one gets mad at you when your kids are throwing popcorn or can't sit in their seat.
Right. Oh, by the way, since you mentioned your children again, I would love to share that I just did a project that I donated my voice again to, which is for kids your age. I think like between 5 and 12 or 10, and it's to explain COVID-19, the coronavirus, in simple language that is a lot less scary and than a lot of it. And it's with the CDC, and I just put it out today, which will be, it's on my social media sites, but I'd love to offer that as well, because I think it's really important that parents have a resource how to explain to their younger children, with an animated little video, and my voice on what it is and how to best handle it. Awesome. So I'm always doing projects of some kind, either giving great voice and donating it, or working, or sharing, or teaching. Or doing the meditation. My whole mission in life is to move and touch people with my voice, and then get other people to feel empowered to do the same.
And on that note, my kids have informed me that it's time to eat dinner, which means they tell me I'm done.
That's awesome.
They're hungry, I think.
I feel it. I feel you. Well, it seems like we had a lot to cover, though. We certainly covered quite a bit.
So where is your official website so people can go there for the things that we've talked about? And,
yes.
On YouTube, you've already mentioned to find Haven. But where would people go if they want to find, what you just mentioned, the COVID-19 video, and to find more about you? And I know you have your blog. It's all there on one website. But where would you like them to go?
Yes, I'm at TasiaValenza.com, and that's my website. And then I'm Tasia Valenza on Instagram, and Tasia Valenza on YouTube, and I'm Tasia Valenza on Facebook and LinkedIn, and kind of pretty much Tasia Valenza. I also have my website, Give Great Voice, which has the TEDx talk, but I think Tasia Valenza does too. So that main one is Tasia Valenza, but if you put in Give Great Voice, you will find me too. And through Tasia Valenza, there's the all my videos that link to Haven, or they can always follow me and then DM me if they're looking for anything. So I'm pretty good. And I also do cameos when people shout out. I don't really focus a lot of that, but I'll get a couple of cameos a week of saying, hey, can you poison ivy? So, or share that. So I'm pretty much around, but if you put in Tasia Valenza and you follow me, I am always sharing, and I love to do some exchanges and interactions. So I'm pretty much engaged. I really love to be engaged with my fans and support.
And now that you've gotten one of your dream projects that took 7 years in the making, I wonder what the next one's going to be.
Oh, for both of us, I really would love, my greatest wish, or my greatest intention, is to get people to think about calling each other and using their voices to stay connected, and to use the vernacular, and that it should go around the world one day. Who did I give great voice to today? That's another thing I really want to share, that, when we use our voices, just as I mentioned in the TEDx, our voice with a loving intention is a gift that we give, and we'll never regret giving it. So our conversation today has been a gift to me, and I would love to share that would be my legacy. My greatest legacy is if we could all know the vernacular to give great voice, to use our ability, especially now while we're feeling this social isolation and social distancing, to reach out and touch each other with our voices.